going to look at some next steps. Where do we go from here as a community? And let's really be thinking, in this case, about the Bangor area.
I want to make sure that we're spreading this across other, current initiatives, that it's not just a new initiative around people with disabilities. These are issues that face people who are poor, and I think the extent to which where we're all doing work in these areas, that we make sure that we're inclusive of folks with disabilities and not setting up a whole new disability coalition.
We've talked about the basics, but the nitty-gritty is like, how do you actually apply and what happens when you apply? Because I feel like the more we know, the more that we can encourage people to enroll.
Direct workers, often they have no idea when I talk to them. I've been the one to educate them on, what this is. So
I mean, I learned so much from both of them sitting next to me. I can go all day and put together a program, but I don't know how it affects them.
when we run into these things, or we have some barriers that are being addressed, that is an opportunity to collaborate and to spread the word about these different programs right there. And the more that this happens, the more it facilitates a smooth transition with the next person,
We all may know about each other, and we get comfortable in our ruts. so opportunities to kind of also help us refocus about and really clarify, okay, what do you do? Oh, well, along my line, I've also added this position too. So that type of opportunity to refocus and collaborate.
That's why the quarterly meetings will be so important, because let's face it, in Maine it's about building relationships. And if I get to know people in other organizations, I can call Scott at DHS and say, hey Scott, I don't know what happened, but this is what happened. So that informal relationship is what works.
Educating employers that it is okay to hire, that there's not as much accommodations necessary to employ someone as you would think, and dispelling the myths and stereotypes of hiring someone with disabilities, because let's face it, the disability population is a large part of our society.
I really would love to see coming out of this a list of attendees and connections, so that if we strike up a conversation here, I don't tomorrow have to have that moment when I can't remember that name. Yeah.
You really shouldn't be talking about plans or business about people with disabilities without including them in the process. And I don't speak for everybody. Avery doesn't speak for everybody. You don't speak for everybody. And there should be a majority of people here with disabilities as opposed to the stacked deck that works the other way here.
I didn't know about Stephanie at all, and I learned from another consumer about you. And but that was the only way that I had any information when I were on disability.
Some of the university and college organizations, I'm thinking specifically of MEOC, I mean, they're a great asset for people coming in, especially non-traditional students who want to go back to college and can't afford it. There's a lot of grant money, a lot of programs to help them.
We have all these people with disabilities, and they've got some great funding programs and supporting for this and that and training and all this kind of thing. But we have these things that fall through the cracks that you, as a business community, have resources that you can help with. And I'm not talking about money at that point. I'm talking, and I said a letter to this effect. I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about donations in kind.
Credit counselors, because many of the folks in business counseling, of course, the credit score if they're going for funding, and then many of them just have issues because of having health issues, the bills that have mounted before they've been able to have sustaining income.
Disabilities, people have multiple health problems, so therefore often their disabilities insurance doesn't always cover that leftover portion, and then it becomes actually works against them. They often get reported to the credit bureaus. That's what we find out, and then it in turn hurts their credit.
Lots of people find themselves in debt, and that itself is a barrier, so a credit counselor is often ideally situated to assist them with that.
Some of what we were talking about was needing to change some of our systems in public policy. So if we're going to be doing stuff like that, we're going to have data tracking somehow, and also the connection with political officials to try to influence that.
And I hear what Mel's getting at is this whole thing around measurable outcomes, you know, and it's part of the Disability Employment Initiative. We want to improve outcomes in employment, education, and wages for people with disabilities. You know, and we're talking more about the numbers we'll get from the Career Center, and you know, but this is bigger than that, you know, and how can we track some of this? So I think it's a good point for us to keep in mind.
There's a piece of trying to formalize financial planning, and when I think about folks who have lots of money, there are a lot of people lined up to help them plan what they're going to do with their money. When you have no money, it doesn't even enter into the conversation because it's you're paying this bill you owed, you're going there. And so I'm wondering about how we formalize that conversation and the kind of education around financial planning.
There's a danger in a la carte. You know, we'll look sometimes like a business will come to us, or they're at the stage of the business where they've gotten over the initial hump. Well, I need to buy a warehouse, and I want to buy this warehouse. And well, do you have a retirement plan in place? No. Well, we would think you should do the retirement plan. There's no shortage. You can rent forever, and it's going to cost you less. Let me break it down and show you than it would to purchase. And so some people will scratch their heads and say, oh, wow. So at the end result, you end up with somebody with a retirement plan, a lessened expense, and they're continuing on in their business. But unless someone takes the time to identify that, do a needs-based kind of approach with them, which some will do, they might end up making the wrong step and really hurting themselves, you know, down the road.
So it's a bigger picture kind of planning process that I don't think we get to in a formalized kind of way.
We all know in the spring of the year, it's job fair season. Somewhere in the state, anywhere in the state you can pick, there's going to be a big job fair and people come from all over. And even some people will show up to these job fairs are service providers. So taking that idea and saying, okay, either incorporate it with job fairs or else have a asset development fair.
Getting your face on the news is always good. Statewide, there's a statewide coalition of local cash coalitions, and the statewide has a relationship with Key Bank that has sponsored television advertisements for the past 2 years.
Testimonials from people who have had their taxes prepared and have gotten an FDA through this. That's our greatest friend is word of mouth and testimonials.
Or even experiences that don't work. I think sometimes those can be very instructional, but having people tell their story about how they use some of these various services and systems to get what they need would be very powerful.
But if we had some kind of package of community services, it would be great to be able to hand that out, I think.
I didn't know of half the agencies that were working together, and you know, if we all had a better picture of the puzzle that was out there as far as step to this to this to this, it would just be, you know, an awful lot better for me anyway.
Every community in Maine has what they call a public assistance officer, or some acronym or some name similar to that. And has any attempt ever been made, or do we have anything available for these people, kind of in a package, so that they, as people come to see them, they can kind of set them on a path to whatever type of help or assistance is available?
Anybody who can contribute to asking the questions of how all of the different services either overlap and to try to avoid that, but to also contribute to the well-being of that individual by listening to that person's needs. That's just integrated resource team in a nutshell.
They can't always come to us, just like I can't have poor women always driving from Washington County to come to Bangor because they have to meet with me. I go to them. So sometimes we have to pick up and go to people where they are.
My agency is engaged in a tremendous amount of outreach. We are at the Moxie Festival, we're at the top of Maine Fair, we're at here, there, and everywhere, just to get the word out, because you don't get an advertising budget well, some agencies do, but we don't get that. Just picking on Dennis. I don't want you to feel left out. But because it's so hard to get the word out, just what you're talking about. Everyone's got their head down and they're doing their job and they're doing their work, and it's so hard to know what is happening in other agencies, what other services are out there, what other programs are out there. And so we have found that they're not going to come to us. We go out to them, and that way we're talking to the end users, we're talking to the consumers, and we're also talking to the service providers to try and spread that word.
All these things we're preaching to the choir. And we do it at meeting after meeting after meeting. If we really want to see change, it's got to go to the general public. We've got to find a way to present these issues in a way that really illustrates the problems that we face as people with disabilities, what are the barriers, but also to normalize some things, and to demonstrate that people with disabilities can work, can be productive, and are out there doing these things now.
Everybody heard Renee today. Because it was the personal story, the personal experience. When we go to Augusta for our program, guess who we bring? Our executive director and 4 speakers who've been through our program and can tell their personal story. Emotion is what people hear.
People seem to have a functional ignorance of what's all that's available to them.
So some kind of referral system that we can build on, that we pull out of our desk and say, oh, okay, this is where you need to go. And
This referral idea, I think, is a great one. Some sort of referral worksheet or booklet.
Welcome back to the Maine Asset Development Summit. We're going to put all the pieces of the puzzle together, hearing from the 3 work groups about what you learned and the possibilities for future collaboration, next steps, how are we going to improve outreach to people with disabilities and really start them in thinking more about a better economic future, greater economic stability, and advancing self-sufficiency. So let's turn to our first group, and Tess, share with us your recommendations.
Good morning. We started with the opportunities for collaboration, and the question that we asked ourselves was, who is missing in this room today? So the answers that we came up with was, we're missing CPAs and lawyers, and the CPAs have a tremendous amount to offer to this discussion in that they also have to earn continuing education credits. So they're somebody that we should include in this conversation. We're missing the adult education courses representatives, labor organizations, colleges, especially the financial education department, people who work with family groups, teachers, health community centers, community health centers. Case management officials are people that are integral in getting this message out to the folks who need this information the most. Chambers of Commerce is another group that was identified as would have been very useful to have in here to get the word out to members of their groups. Human resource officials, economic development representatives from municipalities. We should be bringing our towns and cities into this conversation. The Veterans Administration was identified as a group that should be here. And also 4 Directions, the Native American group that we have here in Maine, would be a wonderful asset to have at our table here too, to get the word out. And the time bank programs, they're now called Our Exchange. The Our Exchange programs would be excellent to have in on this conversation. I've invited my group to shout out anything that I might have missed. Does anybody have anything to offer from the group that I didn't touch upon? So after we identified who is missed from this, we wanted to, that was the first part, was identify who was missing here. But then we started talking about collaboration and networking. And one thing that we did very much agree on was that the development of an umbrella referral system, because there's all sorts of pieces of the puzzle that are out there, but it would be wonderful if we could put these all together under an umbrella system, almost like a clearinghouse system, where we could offer this in one fell swoop, maybe do train the trainer kind of sessions where we could get this information to the trusted intermediaries in our communities to get this out to the persons with disabilities. We talked about perhaps having some sort of referral worksheet that would be shared through Women Working Community or other asset development partners that we have, or some sort of collaboration to identify persons with disabilities so that we could be able to get this information to them. There's something that was brought up too, is that we need people who can see a broader perspective and a broader picture of the entire piece of the puzzle. And if we could work together to bring that perspective so that people aren't just getting little bits and pieces of the information, but rather all of the information, that would be an optimum achievement that we'd be able to do. But we find that case management individuals are trusted intermediaries, and they would be excellent people to network through in our main communities. We talked about marketing and outreach strategies, and again, we talked about marketing through the Chamber of Commerce, possibly job fairs, service providers. We talked about having an asset development fair, going through career centers, local colleges, and Social Security mailings, maybe putting this information out through Social Security mailings. Also, too, the cash coalitions, the first Saturday of February traditionally is Super Refund Saturday, and at these events we do offer asset building opportunities to the people who are coming in to have their taxes prepared. And possibly having this information at this event would be very, very useful, and also at our Deaf Tax Day event that is hosted down in Portland. Perhaps we could expand upon that throughout Maine to offer more deaf tax preparation days. We've had great success putting information into the weekly newspapers and perhaps expanding our message through the little weekly newspapers and public service announcements, and maybe through Maine's job banks. We talked about perhaps having a way for people to identify themselves as a person with a disability so that we could target the information towards them. Of course, being in the 21st century, we talked about YouTube and social networking as a way to potentially get this information out to the people who need it the most. Our next step conversation involved trying to get, maybe figuring out how we could get more attendees and services together and what that would look like. Would we want to have a financial fitness fair? Do we want to tag it to a present event? Do we want to add on to something that's already happening, jobs fairs, or maybe the Super Refund Saturday? Maybe October Disability Mentoring Month or Disability Awareness Month? Maybe creating our own Financial Fitness Month for all of us, including persons with disabilities. Perhaps initiating workshops. And again, we talked about how valuable getting the word out to human resource managers would be in getting our message out about opportunities for persons with disabilities. Is there anything that my group would like to offer that I might have missed or glazed over? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Yes. Let's quickly turn to Avery and the group number 2.
Hi. Well, I'm glad that we're going second because that was so eloquent that that there's a lot of stuff I don't need to talk about. Lovely. Thank you. And I didn't expect to be on camera today, so yeah. Okay, so we had a very spirited discussion, and one thing that I think it's important to bring out at the offset was something that that was one of our group members said that when we talk about we're talking a lot about the disability community, but we also need to keep in mind the the low-income people that might have low income that could also benefit from these services, and that sometimes they overlap, sometimes they don't, and I personally think it's important to bridge gaps, to realize that no matter what economic status you're in or what disability you have, whether it's visible or not, that there's more things that are alike about us than different. And I think that if we do that, then that can help bridge a lot of gaps, more than probably anything else that we could do. But having said that, we talked about something that would be really cool is having like quarterly meetings, bringing together partners in the asset community and the disability community, non-traditional partners that might not be here today, such as transportation companies and educational institutions. Am I missing anything? Okay. We talked about training on asset development programs to service providers, which was brought up before. One thing that we had talked about doing is maybe like a resource guide, and that resource guide having simplified language, because I thought this was great, but not being an economist and not being a math person, some of it I got most of it, but some of it was hard to follow, and I think that if we can do it in the simplest language that we can, that way we can reach the most people. Let's see. We had a woman. Oops, sorry. Sorry. We had a woman in our group that represented the deaf and hard of hearing community, and she talked about if we brought out pardon? Oh, sorry. Do you want to hold it? Cool. And if what the materials that we brought out should also be accessible in various formats to that community as well. The biggest thing the most important thing is that is developing relationships with each other, and realizing that we're a lot more alike than we are different. And I think that that's probably the most important, because as we've said before, we have a lot of good services, but agency A might not realize that agency B exists. So communication and fostering relationships is probably the biggest asset that we've got. And is that it?
I'm gonna switch the one thing we forgot to talk about was we felt it was really important to identify some of the roadblocks that consumers bump into when they're trying to use these programs, and how to network as a group of coalition members to address these roadblocks, because they happen a lot more.
Oh, one thing that we had talked about is maybe doing we weren't sure what to call it, but we called it sensitivity training, because while I would say that 95% of the people that are in this kind of work are in it for the right reasons and have great intentions, there are a few, and they're in every job that we've ever had that just don't need to be there, or they're there for the wrong reasons. So, and as people with disabilities and as people that are dealing with low income, we still have to deal with these people too, and it can be a barrier for us having a successful session, successful time. So sensitivity training was something we brought up. Let's see. And we talked about putting a lot of the asset building stuff that we talked about and other stuff and other things that we had mentioned in our group on the Department of Labor website, because there is information on certain programs, but there isn't on others. And if we're talking about full and equal access, that's something that is really important. And then on the technology piece, we talked about maybe doing podcasts that you could either watch live or, it could be archived for later in terms of access. Okay. All right. Do you want to do this one?
I can, sure.
Cool.
So these were some of the partners we thought were missing. The private sector, employers. Talking about the importance of having employers here helps with the education effort, that just even though we know that people with disabilities can work and do work, we need to do a better job of educating employers that people with disabilities can work as well. The transportation community in Maine, transportation is a huge barrier for folks regardless of disability. The education system, to have more people with disabilities present, we noticed that there was a gap. There were no consumers from the developmental disability community, and that really, if we're talking about people with disabilities, they should be the majority present in this conversation. Social Security and DHHS are here today, but we mentioned that there should be a stronger presence of those individuals, because if we are having issues at a systemic level, if they're at regular meetings with us, we can talk about them more often. And we also brainstormed having a consumer toolkit, that if consumers who are using these services can go out and have some of these resources in their back pocket when someone says, what's the FDA program or what's the PASS, that they can have a little toolkit to give to other folks and use them as part of the education effort. Am I missing anything?
No.
So the third question. I think these are more folks who are missing. Transition teams, folks who are working together when there are layoffs in our community, churches and faith-based organizations, legislators and policymakers, and another idea we had was doing financial literacy presentations at the local level in our libraries. And our final question, outreach and marketing ideas. Avery talked a little bit about this before, was expanding on technology. Debbie mentioned that we really can't communicate in a technological world if we're not texting, because that's what our young people, and for some people with disabilities, they only have a cell phone and are using that technology. I'm not sure if I remember what that one means.
The inviting the public?
Yeah.
Well, one of the members in our group had said, to be honest, we're all preaching to the converted. We get it. We're on the same page. So so it's important to get this out to the non-believers, I guess. I don't know. The last idea that we had was we thought it'd be really great to have if it was possible to have a media campaign of public service announcements of people with disabilities and of people who, might have lower income but have had success, have had financial stability, success, because as much as these workshops do mean a lot and do really good work, that there's no substitute for hearing from the people that are actually affected. So, and I apologize for blowing your ears off. I'm really nervous.
You did a great job.
And if anybody's found me somewhat charming, I've got my resume in the back. So.
Okay, let's hear a round of applause for the second group. Let's quickly go to the back. You're coming to the front.
I'd like to thank the group first of all for all the participation, and Elizabeth for facilitating and keeping us all on track. Topics we discussed pretty much similar, the same as others. Opportunities for collaboration, who's missing, marketing and outreach in the disability community. Who's missing? People with disabilities, educational institutions, and with that, colleges and high school as well. Thought were to get them in high school before they all of a sudden get out and find out, what am I going to do with myself? Businesses with disabilities is a priority. Alpha One is a great example of that. Employers, healthcare influencers and providers, credit counseling providers. A couple of great thoughts came up on that one. Somebody ends up with a disability. Now all of a sudden, what do I do? Credit counselors, great opportunity to provide that, as well as banking institutions. Aging services, transportation. Big barrier in the state, as we're all aware. Marketing and outreach. Social Security, we're fortunate to have had a Social Security rep with us, and we kind of kicked around quite a few different things as far as what we perhaps all could do a little bit better. Opportunities for people to join inserting information into Social Security packets, so that when people get the packets, they look and say, oh, this is something new and different, as opposed to, I don't understand it, so I'm going to throw it away. Sharing personal stories through mainstream media. I have to say, having worked with Renee quite a bit through the Career Center, I cannot tell you how touched I was by hearing her story here. I really was. And she shared stories that I wasn't aware of as far as a lot of the other agencies that are out there. And how do we put that whole packet together? Very, very important and very, very critical. Utilize public assistance offices. Packets of information out there, allowing individuals to find out what are some of the other services that are out there. For instance, as a Ticket to Work individual, I know of this program, that program, but I've learned an awful lot today about other programs that I wasn't aware of, and hopefully some others here learned about us. Utilize, Elizabeth? Free local cable stations. Thank you very much, appreciate that. Lots of folks do watch the cable stations. They do see all the spin-outs that come out on that. Great way to provide information free of charge at no serve. Follow the BIC, Business Information Centers. Janet offered some information of what they're doing at the EMDC office down there in Ellsworth, providing lots of information. Great tool for others to provide, and also a great tool for others to think about implementing. Model and create assistance centers in perhaps doctor's offices. Generally speaking, folks with disabilities do go to doctor's offices. If it's possible to provide information, great place to be putting it. Also, areas where other individuals are present. Collaboration. Roundtable for multiple resources to meet, greet, share information, and build their collaboration. Once again, we took some information that was offered and being done down in Ellsworth as far as groupings together, and they indicated that they're going to be branching out into that into other areas. Add speakers with personal experience. Once again, Renee. I think she brought an awful lot to the table here today, at least from my point of view she did, who can add to the conversation and give real-life challenges. Cross-community with asset disability conversation to better understand each other's services. Probably the most important thing I think all of us got out of this today, at least once again from my point of view. Use duplicate services as an opportunity to offer individual support and individual support rather than view as a competition. A couple of us did share information that we do provide the same services. We're not ambulance chasers. If there's an individual or a group out there that can provide a better service than I can, I'm going to be very happy to refer an individual to that group. Marketing and outreach. Information at different particular fairs, health fair fairs, educational fairs, to get the information out. Identifying and referring individuals to financial coaches. Mainstream Finance is one. Till today, I'd never even heard of Mainstream Finance. Today, I do know all about it. I think John gave an excellent presentation this morning, some of the services at Bangor Savings Office. I'm sure that other financial institutions out there do the same and can do the same, and it's a great opportunity to refer individuals to those programs. Provide information to hospitals and rehab services. If an individual is coming out of rehab or out of a service, let them know about the services before they walk out the door so they have an opportunity to think about it. Utilize organizations such as Alpha One to distribute information. Elizabeth? Okay, I'm sorry? Okay, thank you. Everybody hear that? Good, thank you. Like I said, we used the whole team. We had a great group. Integrate resource team. Individual leads with circles of support to align the resources / services they may need to achieve their goal. And we're done. Being the last, everybody else pretty much said everything I had to say, or we had to say anyway, so thank you very much.